Every year at this breakfast, we want to share with you a first-hand account of the impact of mental illness in our society. And so please join me now in welcoming two people who are going to share their story with you. Ian Fisher and Sam Fisher, father and son, and advocates for this cause. Please welcome them.
If I don't look up, I won't see 600 people in front of me. If I do look up, you're all naked. Good morning. On behalf of my family, we want to thank Royal Ottawa Hospital for inviting us here this morning. We especially want to thank Andre, Tracy, and Heather for helping us to prepare for today. For those in the video and those in the room who have been up here, you most of all know this is not easy. I also want to say thank you for the amazing support the Ottawa Police Services provided me as my employer. The interest in my family and the comfort and privacy they allowed us when it was needed was amazing. Depression, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, schizophrenia, anxiety. Listed like this, I could be reading from a medical textbook. But mental illness are not merely words in a textbook. It's about something that costs our society billions of dollars every year, and that surpasses even cancer or heart disease in frequency and scope. But no one was wanted to talk about it until recently. Mental illness touches all of you here in this room, people walking down the street, people you work with, families in your neighborhood, kids who mysteriously appear out of your basement and introduced as friends of your son or daughter, teens on a sports team, the homeless person you look away from. 1 person in 5 has a mental illness, and 2 of these 5 people are part of my family. Today I stand here in front of you, ready to tell you about my brother Alan and my son Sam. The first story is about tragedy and loss, the second about hope. My brother and I were only 2.5 years apart. I looked up to him. He was my idol, my best friend. We were raised on a farm in New Brunswick, and we shared everything, even the same room growing up. November 18th, 1976, 35 years ago next month, I lost him forever. In the 70s, families couldn't bear the shame of one of their children taking his own life. In our case, the official report was he died of a hunting accident. He was 20 years old, and he had his entire life ahead of him. My parents suffered what no parent should ever have to do. They made funeral arrangements for their child. We accepted condolences from friends and family about such a terrible tragedy, but the word suicide was never uttered. As a family, we tried to rally around, but quite frankly, we were lost in a world we didn't understand. But the secret was there, and it remained hidden for a very long time. The perception of shame could not escape us. Everyone in my family has been affected in different ways. My father passed away 6 weeks ago, and just before he died, we visited the graves of my brother and my mother. And he still referred to it as the accident. After all these years, that's how he protected himself. And me, I was mad as hell with my brother for years, because he was a great brother, he would have been a great father, and a fantastic uncle to Sam. And I felt cheated. And my other brother has had his troubles too. We haven't seen very little of him in 35 years, only twice in the last 10, once for my mom's funeral and again for my dad's this past August. In the 70s, families of suicides didn't talk about it, nor was there much in the way of counseling, certainly not in a small town in New Brunswick. Here we are 35 years later, and the counseling and support we receive is nothing short of amazing. But 35 years later, we still don't talk about suicide. Very well. 35 years ago, my family was devastated by mental illness, and we couldn't talk about it. This year, mental illness touched my family again. But this time, we're not operating in silence or shame. My family is here today to tell our story, but this isn't the story of tragedy. It carries a lot of hope, and I firmly believe that one reason for this hopeful feeling is that we are beginning to lift this veil of darkness from mental illness. I want to tell you about Sam, my only child. He's 15 years old. He's tall. Got to get some height from his mother. He'd be 4 inches taller than me. He's gifted, he's extremely competitive on a ski hill, he's articulate, he's focused, he's funny, and he's lots of friends. He's on Facebook, and he texts. He texts a lot, almost as much as his mother. For me, I thought his only flaw was somehow he'd become a Leafs fan. Daniel, you got your work cut out. But for a child who's fragile, I can tell you that Facebooking and texting can be a bit of a toxic mix, especially when people post things on Facebook that seem on the surface to be less than kind and potentially ostracize a kid on the receiving end of a negative comment. I'm not a fan of Facebook because I think it needs a lot of work, especially in the hands of our kids. Being a teenager is the toughest part of your life. In an effort to fit in, Sam has made some bad choices, and the kids he used to call his friends didn't help. He began to act differently. His up times began to become overshadowed by his down times. Dark thoughts, he would eventually tell us. Some days it was like we had a stranger living in our house, and as fast as those periods came on, they would disappear. And we would breathe again. And like any parent would do, we tried to talk to him about his behavior, but he shrugged us off. Nothing is wrong, I'm fine, he would say. Usually we just got a shrug. We worried about Sam, and while we tried to monitor his movements, as any parent of any teenager will tell you, it's impossible to be with them all the time. And we discovered it wasn't just the type of kids he hung around with that we didn't get. We knew there were drugs, and we tried to discuss them, and we had our suspicions about alcohol, and the report cards, and the skipping of classes. It was only later when we learned that Sam was using drugs and alcohol to escape from a much deeper problem. He was self-medicating, using drugs and alcohol to feel better about himself. Sam was depressed and had been for some time, possibly many years. He's 15. This shouldn't have been happening. To us, he had his whole life in front of him, and we were excited. To him and his depression, the thought of his whole life ahead of him was terrifying, and he felt he couldn't survive. To Sam, his despair and pain seemed insurmountable. On January 20th of this year, just 8 short months ago, Sam came home from school and attempted to end his life. Thank God that something in him that day reached out for help. I don't know what it was that after he poisoned himself, he found the courage to call his mom to tell her he had done something stupid. She called me from the West End and I set a new speed record from downtown to Orleans. And I apologized to my employer, but I probably owed him for a speeding ticket. When Sam tried to take his own life that January, our lives stood still. Sam felt there was no way out. He completely lost hope. But I'm here today to tell you that there is hope. Sam's made it physically. We found him in time and we got him to the hospital. By a miracle, he's here today. He's dealing with this illness called major depression, and as a family, we're dealing with it too. We've done lots of talking during the last 8 months and lots of therapy. Just recently, through my own counseling, I've learned of dysthymia, or chronic mild depression. And while it's not as acute as I now suspect my brother Alan's was, or Sam's is, I have learned a lot about how I can modify my behavior to help Sam. Sam's taking medication that seems to be helping. Sure, he still has his down periods and he has a very short fuse, but he's doing much better. He's in a different school and he's making new friends. Our story is one of tragedy and hope. The tragedy of a brother lost to suicide 35 years ago under a cloud of secrecy. The hope of a son who was working through his mental illness one day at a time. Sam said to me once with an undertone of some frustration that if he had a tumor or cancer, his classmates at school would be holding a bake sale. But because I have a mental illness, he says, I can't talk about it. That's unbelievably sad. We've made great strides in almost 4 decades, and yet we have a few more barriers to knock down, and silence is the biggest. I stand before you today with Sam, not ashamed to hide our family story. We're moving forward, and our goal, our hope, is to get Sam into full remission so he can live his life like any other healthy young man. In many ways, we still have much to do to break down the stigma surrounding mental illness, and each one of you can help make that happen. Until we get the schools to hold bake sales for someone who is battling depression, then we haven't moved the yardstick far enough. I'm so proud of my son for the courage he's showing by being here today. Sam wants to make a difference in other kids' lives, and I'm so thankful that he's here with me to inspire that hope. I'm so proud of him. And I'm proud that given the opportunity, this 15-year-old has the courage to speak up, and I know with the support and strength from everyone in this room, he is prepared to have his story make a difference to other teenagers. For our family, that silence finally stops here today. Thank you for your time this morning and your support of the Royal Ottawa Hospital. And if you're a parent, go home tonight, hug your child, blame it on a 15-year-old Leafs fan, and please start a conversation about a kid named Sam.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam. My dad introduced me, thank you. I'm really happy to be here today with my dad and my loving family. I'm really happy to have a chance to share my story with everyone and people. I'm excited to have people to listen to me. This is actually my first time telling my story in public, so none of my friends know. I'm hoping to tell them today. From a distance, my story is not so different than any other teenager. I was just goofing off, doing teenage things. And we've all done it. Everyone's done this in their teenage years. But something that I experienced was sadness and a sense of loss and no hope left. And I had lost hope. And most teenagers are starting to feel this nowadays. And I felt this. I didn't know that what I had been feeling for a few years was depression. The more I felt down, the more I couldn't cope, so the more I took drugs, the more I self-medicated. I thought it would make me feel better. When things got so bad last January, I felt the only way out was to take my own life, and I tried. Luckily, I failed. I remember my mom and my dad by my side at the hospital. They never left. They've been amazing, and they've been with me for all this time. All the bad times and all the good times to this day. I was lucky that time. Because of great doctors, I'm here today, and I'm finally starting to understand why I was feeling so sad and so down. Those were dark years. Things are getting better every day. I hope that we can get teens to start talking about depression. It's becoming a serious problem, and how they feel and what they should do when they feel bad. There are people who can help them, but I know they're still scared to open up about this problem. I know I was. Now, when my dad asked me to come here today to tell my story, I was all for it. I didn't realize the room would be this big and this many people. I want to do whatever I can to help other teenagers and other people talk about depression and mental illness. It's starting to become a serious problem, and we need to take care of it before it's too late. In my high school, no one talks about depression. And sometimes teens say awful things, or whisper among each other, or post horrible comments on Facebook, or even Twitter. I think it's time to talk. We need to be able to talk to each other, not just as parents and children, but children and other children need to talk. It's important for parents and their kids to open up about it, but it's also important for kids to open up about it, like we do in my family. I know that suicide is a very scary statistic with young teenagers today. This year, near the end of January, I almost became a statistic. I'm here as a kid who now has hope. I feel better, and I know I can always reach out for help when I need it. I believe we can make things better for other kids like me and people like the uncle I never got to meet. I'm glad you're here today to listen to stories like mine and my family's. There are lots of families like mine who need help, and the Royal is a great place for that help. They help lots of people just like my family. I'm asking you today to please support them. Please support me, my family, and everyone else who has this problem. Trust me, I know it will make a difference. My name is Sam Fisher. You all know who I am. Are you with me?